Way back on episode 11 of this podcast, we had Ryan Duarte, lead singer of Post Paradise, on the show. We didn't feature his music on that episode because, well, let's be honest, I'm still getting my act together. They're on iTunes and Spotify if you enjoy their music. Here's a sample of Post Paradise from the track called Here Come the Wolves.
Off to sleep so you won't feel a thing till they're tearing you apart.
Hello and welcome to the NoCo. I am your host, Ivan Wayne. Let's get to it. I was expecting to learn a little bit during today's interview. I had no idea I would receive a legitimate science lesson in nitrogen, carbon, and how it affects our NoCo community in small but powerful ways. I found today's guests on Instagram, and this topic is something I knew little to nothing about, and I wanted to discover it live on this podcast. Stay tuned for a special deal for listeners of the show who happen to live in the FOCO area from Compost Queen, Fort Collins. Here's Jamie and Max. We sit here in person at the Loveland Public Library, and I am joined by Jamie Blanchard Poling, founder and owner of Compost Queen. So good morning.
Good morning.
And we're also joined by her husband, Max Poling.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So why Compost Queen? Where did this originate?
So I was actually on a vacation with my mother and my grandmother. My mom and I were visiting my grandmother. And it kind of came to me based on what was going on in her little town in Indiana. And I thought about it. And when I came back from vacation, I was like, there is no compost sort of thing going on in Fort Collins. So maybe I should look into that. And after I did some research, there was only one company it's actually located in Greeley. But there was not anything local in Fort Collins. So I decided to do a little more research and, it kind of just one thing led to another and it just all seemed to go together. And I founded Compost Queen, basically. So what it is it's a residential pickup for compost in Fort Collins. Hopefully I'll be able to expand that to Loveland and other cities surrounding Fort Collins. But right now it's just in Fort Collins. And basically we give you a bucket. You put your compostable materials in it. I pick it up once a week. And then from there, I take the compost and I compost it in my area, which is on my side yard right now. And when we get bigger, we're going to a local family farm, hopefully in the spring for when it gets bigger. And then I will do there. So right now we're doing windrows type of composting. So it's outdoor and, it requires water, turning, aeration, things like that. And it will eventually turn into compost that you can use in your own garden or landscaping, which we do offer to our customers.
When I think of composting, it reminds me of my grandmother and grandfather's field. They had some home gardening and they had 10 acres, and I spent a lot of my childhood there. And the first thing that comes to mind for me for compost is this giant amorphous hay pile that my grandfather had out there.
Yeah.
And I remember walking out as a child and being so confused because it was like a big hay stack when I thought that's what it was. But there would be eggs on there, or there'd be vegetables on there, and I was just always so baffled at what is this, and slowly got this idea of compost, which I'll admit as an adult, I may not even still know exactly what compost is. Maybe some listeners out there are agreeing with me.
Absolutely.
What is compost and how do we decide what should be composted?
So compost is basically natural products that degrade over time naturally. So anything from food that grows from the earth, nothing man-made, and any type, things like leaves. The forest floor is a compost haven, and that's because every fall the leaves fall down, they start to mold and decay, and eventually that mold and decay breaks down enough by the anaerobic bacteria and becomes soil, and that soil fertilizes the forest floor, which then goes into all the plants that are there.
So you noticed this idea in Indiana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a town in Indiana?
Yeah, Bloomington.
Bloomington, Indiana. And so what sparked a fire in you that said, this is what I want to do?
So honestly, I just saw a flyer in a coffee shop, and I looked at it, and I stood there, and, I did that thing where, your head cocks to the side, and it was like, huh. And then it grew from there. I brought it back home. I did research. I thought about it. And when I realized we did not have a good system for this, as well as Fort Collins is on its way, we have a zero waste initiative by 2030. And unfortunately, we are not on track. We are doing better than when it started. I believe it was either 2012 or 2014, but we're doing better. But one of the things that is an issue is that our landfill is going to be completely full and no more things can go to it at 2025. And so what are we going to do? The best thing to do is to reduce our waste. In order to reduce our waste, that means taking certain things out of the trash that can go elsewhere, like compostable items.
And then, not only is it reducing the amount that's going in the landfill as regular garbage, but you were telling us before that you actually turn it into stuff you can put back in your home garden.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So my customers will receive, if they want it, not everyone wants it, but if they want it, they will receive 1 4-gallon bucket of compost in the spring that they can put into their gardens or landscaping wherever they want. Just to make sure that people don't do this, never fill a pot or your gardens with just compost. Compost is a soil amendment. It adds nutrients and bacteria that is actually good for plant growth. And so if you do all of compost, it's actually too much and it inhibits plant growth. But when you amend your soil with it, it adds just the right amount of those things so that your gardens, your shrubs, your trees, your bushes get those nutrients and they grow prettier, faster, stronger, all those types of things.
Yeah, we're also talking about completing the soil food web. And so essentially you've heard of farm to table. We're completing that cycle and closing the loop for going table to farm. And there's really a lot of stored nutrients and locked up nitrogens and things of that nature that bacterial and fungal cultures can release into the soil that you currently have that may have been depleted from your previous growing season, or provide further substitution for your soils that can improve either shrubbery growth or lawn care growth, all the way to traditional perennials, lawns, etc.
Yeah, we were talking about right before we started the podcast that you all are involved in some sort of like Korean gardening practices or something with like the end cycle of the compost.
Yeah, so a lot of the emerging theory for clean growing or organic growing practices is going to include the use of bacterial and fungal cultures to try to break down nutrients that are locked in soils by either nematodes or other sorts of cultures or broken down pieces of leaves and old plant roots from things that have not been tilled. And by adding compost as a soil amendment, you can provide the bacterial and fungal cultures that start breaking down those locked nutrients and actually can turn things like phosphorus into phosphates that plants actively eat, similar with nitrogen to ammonium or nitrate. And these provide more rapid uptake for plant growth and remove the need for you to produce a synthetic fertilizer or like a nitrogen amendment to your soil. This works really well in the Korean method where they're not tilling soils, they're leaving old root structures to be broken down and provide that continuing cycle of the soil food web.
Now, maybe I'm admitting a bias here to the compost queen herself, but I feel like compost is maybe overlooked. I feel like there's trash and there's recycling. Everyone says recycle,
Absolutely.
reduce, reuse. And sometimes when I'm out in public and I see that third bin of compost, it's like I almost don't know what to do with that.
Oh, sure.
Do you feel like there's a reason or like, why maybe is compost not as much in the spotlight as it could be?
I think, first of all, people just don't know about it. People have for,
millennia.
Yeah, been throwing away their food scraps as trash. And so there was no other way, especially, back in the day, compost was a thing when humans were growing and becoming...
Yeah, but our American culture here is very much oriented towards a one-time use, disposable, we get plastic carry-out for everything. And part of the idea of being able to bring compost back into our agricultural focused community is providing a resource for people who may not have the ability to do so or the knowledge or wherewithal. A lot of what we see with compostable materials is the exit containers that say okay to compost or will break down compostably. And there's a big misnomer out there that actually is a viable product for composting. About 80% of the material that's there, like paper cups or takeout containers, are going to have a small plastic liner in them that may break down, but it can take up to 10 to 30 years, requires industrial composting facilities, things of that nature. Really what we're providing is a traditional anaerobic process that can break down active food scraps and amend that to things like lawn waste, dead leaves, and other landscaping materials to provide a rich culture of compost that can be put back into soil amendments.
So we do have compostable bags that we use, and I'm actually composting those separately because I want to see the lab results of that compost before I give it out to people, because if there's plastic in there, I don't want to sell it.
Right.
Yeah.
The other biggest benefit we see from composting food scraps specifically is there's a lot of methane and greenhouse gas that get emitted from actively breaking down food scraps in a aerobic environment,
right.
Which means there's no air for it to break down. And typically this is in like a landfill pile, something of that nature where it doesn't get turned, rotated, watered, or mixed with the right set of carbon and nitrogen heavy materials. And with that, you can see something about 7 miles or so per pound of compost compared to a driven vehicle is removed in greenhouse emissions from the local environment when you compost food scraps.
Right.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm getting a science lesson, I'll tell you that.
I know.
Well, and so because a part of that, the benefit that we do as a public benefit corporation is we do provide a monthly report on your greenhouse gas emission reduction and how much compost you've specifically been collecting and producing, in addition to our total numbers for a company.
It also gets reported to the city on a bi-quarterly basis, and it gets reported to the state on an annual basis.
So how long has Compost Queen been around?
So this was my brainchild last summer, and we officially started, and...
we did a big launch in September.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And our original launch was picking up fall leaves, right?
Yes, yeah. So we, in order to get our name out there, in last fall, it was last September, October, November time, we decided that we would pick up people's leaves for free so they would know about us, know what we do, go to our website, sign up for it. And we got a lot of people and a lot of leaves. And leaves are something that are a carbon-based material. And carbon-based materials are much needed in compost because food-based materials are heavy in nitrogen. And you really need both of them to create good compost. So we stocked up on our leaves in the fall so we can continually add them throughout the year and create that the correct amount of each thing to make good compost, basically.
Yeah, then we had a little fun with it, and we did a little Grim Reaper promotion for dead pumpkins for Halloween. Yeah, so if you had a dying jack-o'-lantern or something of that nature, we'd come by and pick that up for you too.
Absolutely.
Dang. So what other carbon-based items do people usually put in compost besides leaves?
Not much, honestly.
Lawn trimmings have a little bit more heavy nitrogen composure to them, but...
it's brown. So carbon is brown. Is basics, rule of thumb. And so when leaves die, they have more carbon. However, when they're green, they have more nitrogen. So that's why dead leaves are some of the best things that we can add.
We also take branches, shrub trimmings, things like that are going to be under about 2 inches in diameter to really help offset all of that material.
Yeah, and we can chip those, break them down, put them in the pile.
Dang.
Yeah.
You just reminded me how, it was like a year ago I realized, and this may seem silly, but I realized for the first time how much of of a science cooking is. Like when you see the show and it's like a little bit of glaze here, a little bit of saute here, just so like, you know, a 30-second window can make all the difference in a recipe. And you know, it reminded me, it's like, I just think of compost as this process, but you know, like the nitrogen and the carbon base is like really interesting. And it's
Absolutely.
things that I think a lot of people, including myself, don't know at all.
Correct. And so Fort Collins, the city of Fort Collins does have something on their website for backyard composting. And so what people are doing is they have this bin or a pile or whatever in their yard, and they just throw stuff on it and they never do anything with it. And that's fine. You can totally do that, but you will not have good compost for at least 2 years, if not more.
Yeah, our process really relies on going through what they call a thermophilic stage that's going to break that pile up to about 185 degrees. And from there, it's going to kill all of the negative bacteria, seeds, any other spores that might be sitting in there that we're not looking for. And eventually, we do have some goals of bringing on potentially an intern or something of that nature from CSU for a soil science testing and ensuring that our products are of the highest quality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see a lot of partnership opportunities with the university.
Oh, yeah. So they have their own program, and it's not connected with the city, and they do it all themselves, and it's great. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but they compost hundreds of pounds a day from their cafeteria, and they're teaching their students to put the right things in the compost bin so that they take them and do it. And it's amazing, and it's great, and you know, that's really helping our landfill situation. And so what I'm trying to do is do that for the community, so that way we can get on par with CSU because they're doing such a great job.
Well, another big difference I'd point out there too is they have a huge, veterinary and animal programs at CSU, and that can really help break down compost in a traditional farm type manner. And they additionally add manures and things of that nature as well. We are manure free. We're simply food scrap and lawn waste soil amendment. So there's not really any of the other risk of carrying some of those other diseases that can come in from animal byproduct and waste. Additionally, we look at targeting people who may not have the opportunity to compost at their home, whether you live in a condo or an apartment or somewhere where you may not have final use even for completed compost, but still want to contribute to reducing your waste, landfill impact, greenhouse gas emissions, those kind of qualities.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't want anybody in Fort Collins bagging up their poop and leaving it out their compost.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
We will leave this here. We'll take the compost. Sir, you can take that back inside.
Yeah.
Right. So how do people get involved with you all if they hear this and just, so a way that they can link up with Compost
Oh, sure. So the best way is to check out our website. It's www.compostqueenfc.com or check out our Facebook page, which is Compost Queen or how do you do that?
At Compost Queen FC.
Okay.
Yeah. On Facebook, Instagram. You can just search Compost Queen. The City of Fort Collins website also has a few links over to our page. But actually for the More You NoCo podcast listeners, we're going to be offering a special promotion. You can sign up for our regular service and we'll include our stainless steel countertop bin, which has a activated charcoal carbon filter in the lid to avoid any stinks on your counter, anything of that nature, for free, which is about a $25 value if you sign up for us.
Yeah.
The service is about $20 a month. If you bundle up your months into 3, 6, or 12-month bundles, you're going to be saving about 10 to 30%.
Right. And what type of response in these first 6 months have you had from the community? How are people finding out about you all?
Facebook is a huge one, first of all, but we are very excited to start doing some events. So winter is not a very good time for composting. People are not thinking about it. They're not thinking about, eating healthy. They're not thinking about gardening. So it's kind of, been a holdback, but we are so excited for spring. We're excited to get in the farmers market circuit. We are excited to do the home and garden show in Fort Collins at the CSU Stadium in May?
Mother's Day weekend.
Mother's Day weekend. That's right.
Okay.
And so we will definitely be offering some specials there as well.
And this landfill idea from Fort Collins and how this is an issue on the rise and it's something in the future. One thing it made me think of is, I don't know where along the way, I probably saw a talk or maybe read an article, but one thing I try to imagine is that every time I throw something away, it seems like minuscule, right? In the big picture of the world, but every bottle I throw away, I times by 7 billion. And then I imagine like a milk carton times 7 billion. And I start to realize the impact. Or like just when you go to bag your trash and you're carrying it out to the dumpster and you look at it and you think, I'm not the only one doing this today.
Oh, no.
You know, there are 7 billion people. And just thinking about that is like, I think it brings a healthy awareness to this is not somebody else's problem. I think it's something that we all have to like put a little piece into.
Absolutely. And so if you do think about it like that, start thinking about the food scraps that are in there that could possibly be composted. How much less would that bag be full, if you know what I mean? So that's kind of the point of doing this, is to reduce how big those bags are or how often you throw them out.
Reuse food scraps in the soil food web as well.
Instead of
which if you know the traditional reduce, reuse, recycle, we're talking about the 2 steps before even recycling here. So reducing that footprint of active trash that's being thrown away, reusing it back into soil amendments in the food web, and then finally, if you have additional materials that you can recycle, like the packaging that they come in or jars, etc., that's going to be your final and ultimate best step.
And Jamie, what did you do before this?
I was a program manager for a company that did services for people with disabilities.
Okay. Do you still do that on the side? Or
I do not.
Compost Queen is taken over?
It is the one and only now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was that a little nerve-wracking for starting off
absolutely.
something that you saw on a flyer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, I have been composting myself for a very long time. And so I kind of knew what it was about. I have the bins in my backyard. I was trying to do it right. And when I got my final product, I was like, oh, look at that. That actually worked. And so I kind of knew about it. And so the whole flyer thing, that sparked the idea of doing it on a bigger scale.
Right. Besides this landfill debacle that's coming up in the next few years, do you think there's other things related to composting people in the FOCO community should know about?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There are community gardens that are doing it. That's great. If you do have a community garden, add to it. Do your part and use that resource that is there for you. However, if you don't, look into my services and, try your best. See how it goes. We offer a 4-gallon bucket for every week, and we've seen that a household of 2 even fills that up. So, I mean, it's a great thing to think about.
I had seen something on an email that you all sent me about like GHG emissions, GHG commission.
Greenhouse gases, yeah.
Right.
So methane, CO2, all those type of things. Additionally, where we see a large opportunity is going to be businesses, restaurants, places like Otterbox that have a large in-house cafeteria producing a lot of food scrap waste. This is a way for them to also reduce their full-on carbon footprint on our local economy and environment. Additionally, we compost everything here locally. With Compost Queen, we're not spending gas or other energy resources to take it to a centralized location. We're composting it here in Fort Collins on site, keeping it local, trying to return it back to the community where we can.
Yeah, most excellent. And this is more than just residential, right? Businesses can get involved with you all as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have a early kind of partnership with a Fort Collins vegan restaurant, the Gold Leaf Collective, and they'll be piloting our commercial setup for us so that we can evaluate what the pros and cons are for them. We're still finding a way in which restaurants and other businesses like this can fully capitalize on the composting movement. But it really closes that loop. If you're going table to farm, you should be falling back with farm to table with soil amendments, things of that nature that can really produce a better local economy.
Right. And it's just nice. I mean, the whole idea of it is refreshing because it's not just like reducing, but I mean, there are benefits. It's community. It helps local business. You all, Compost Queen. And if you are a person who plants flowers and gardens, there are benefits right there for you. And I just think this whole cycle is like, it's something that a lot of people would be involved in if they knew about it, right? And that's why I'm excited about this episode is people just like hear about it, Because this is like, when you were talking about carbon versus nitrogen, I mean, these are things that I have never considered.
The average person doesn't know.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing we, have some other big ideas that will flow into some of the core values of our business being a public benefit corporation. So the concept of growing food in your yard instead of lawns or any aesthetically pleasing plants or items that don't really have a value beyond just looking nice in your yard. Additionally, like we've said, educating people about the living soil food webs, and then supporting our local economy in ways that we can give back through community gardens, awareness events, and eco collaborations, whether it be things like Poudre River trash cleanups or things of that nature. We're looking to really be a part of the greener movement up here in northern Colorado.
Yeah, and like you said, events. Events are a huge thing. We have so many events when it's nice out.
Right.
It's snowing right now, but when it's nice out, we have
icy.
so many events, and there's so much food that gets put in the trash. And so there is a hole that I would love to be able to fill.
Yeah, and speaking of events, you'll have some coming up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did mention we'll be at the Fort Collins Farmers Markets starting in late April, I believe.
Late May.
Late May. And then from there, the CSU Home and Garden Show at the new Canvas Stadium on campus at Colorado State University.
Very excited about that. It's expanding this year. We went last year and it was, it was all right, but it's going to be so much bigger this year. It's going to be really fun, I think, for families to go to and just check out things to, homeowners that you would do around your house. And it's, I don't know, I think it's a fun time, but.
Right. And are you both from northern Colorado?
No. I'm from Northern California originally.
And I am from Southern California, but we took an adventure around the U.S. for about 8 months and ended up deciding that Colorado was the only new place that we could call home. We absolutely fell in love with Fort Collins, and we came here in September one year. And how can you not love Northern Colorado in September?
Oh,
it's just gorgeous out here.
The leaves. Oh,
just
God.
Remember that phrase the next time you sit in traffic on I-25 because you are not alone in that sentiment.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
How long have you all been here?
Three and a half
4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's neat because one thing some people are surprised to know about me is that I'm not from northern Colorado either, and yet I have this show. And so I always think it's neat that people move here, and it doesn't mean that we can't connect in community just because we're not from here. Like you get here and you realize like, oh, I want to invest in the people that live right next to me. They live down the block or they live 2 miles over and just create this community. And like community gardens are such an awesome space. I'd always wondered like, what is that for? And then I kind of like pseudo got involved in one or like a community flower garden and was just like, wow, you meet people, you're working with your hands, and it's a neat thing. And the business that you all have is definitely right in the center of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, well, one thing I might leave people with is a lot of people hear how simple it is to put scraps on a pile, kind of rotate them and water them, and create compost. Really, it is easy if you can spend the time, all the time, managing temperatures, knowing what you're putting into soil, dealing with unusual smells or odors on occasion, things of that nature, juicy little bits that come out of the bottom of the trash can. It is a bit of a dirty work, and part of what we seek to provide with Compost Queen is eliminating some of that ick factor, the difficulty, the constant attention and maintenance that needs to make a correct product, and then also specializing the final outputs, whether they be more heavy in bacterial producing nitrogen type content or more heavy in fungal producing for trees and shrubbery. So really kind of taking that home compost idea and pushing it to the next professional level.
Okay. Well, thank you both for your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you for having
We
us.
appreciate you having us.
I think this has been informative, both for the community and also educational, because I'm sitting here with my head spinning, not knowing about this much about compost. So
I know.
great.
It's crazy, right?
Well, we appreciate it. And if you guys want to visit compostqueenfc.com, when you sign up, go ahead and mention that you heard us on the More You NoCo podcast, and we'll be happy to give you that free stainless steel countertop bucket.
There it is. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan.
If you enjoy the More You NoCo, please check out our other episodes. We've had such a variety of interesting and awesome people, you never know what you're going to find. I've been in awe and wonder going on this journey around northern Colorado. Read the episode descriptions, take a shot, and discover our NoCo community. Trevor Fossey, always putting in the time to edit and mix these episodes. Thank you so much for your dedication and hard work. Russell Isaac Long, our guest on episode 67 of the show, makes all our music here at the More You NoCo. Thank you, good sir. We are on Facebook and Instagram if you're interested in staying connected with us, or just to see bonus visual content in addition to this very audio-driven podcast experience. We will be back soon with another conversation, exploring and connecting the people who make up Northern Colorado. Until next time, peace!